Hi, everybody. It's Ginger. I'm back. I wanted to go through Joshua chapter 3 with you. I recorded it once already, and I thought I've got to do it again because it's, you know, with a casual reading, and if you ever heard it in Sunday school or whatever, it's much more of an intense happening than it seemed. So, I just wasn't happy with how I discussed it in the first time. But anyway, there was a video I watched which inspired me to record it again, and I wanted to mention that. It's on YouTube. So the YouTube channel is Holy Land Site, Site, no spaces. And I'm only going to give you a few of the words. It was like a lot of words in the title, but once you get to that site, you can type in Jordan River Crossing, or the name of the video is Jordan River Crossing, Miracle into Promised Land. It goes on from there. I think like the next words are baptism of Jesus or something like that. So anyway, I like the way the guy discusses it because he really understands the geography of the area and what the geography of the area was like before him. And remember, I wish you're just going to have to Google your own map because it's not going to be as good. But this is an old, this is a map at the time. And so the people were crossing from the east to the west. And this was about, let's see, like here you've got your Sea of Galilee, the Jordan River, which eventually flowed into the Dead Sea. And your area that they were crossing over was, they were in the area of Shittim, which is right here. And then they crossed over to Jericho, which is right here. So where they crossed was right across from Jericho. When the people finally enter the Promised Land, they have to cross the river, the Jordan River. So those three bodies of water, they really are significant in understanding biblical things. So if you can Google some Bible maps, print them off maybe, it'll help a lot. I got this book of Bible maps, and it's okay. But I don't know, it doesn't have that many, and it doesn't, I don't know, like it doesn't show, like when I have, let's see, let me show you here. I was a little, they're fine, but I don't know. I was just thinking it would be something more substantial here. Like this shows too much. This one I was going to show you here. Now this was far beyond the time of Jesus, but I don't know. Like this is the New Testament map, and it doesn't show what I'm trying to show you here. Anyway, it's pointless to even show you that, but I might keep shopping. Maybe I'll actually go into a store. I ordered that from Amazon. Maybe I'll actually go into a store where I can look at it before I buy it. But anyway, we were in Joshua chapter 2 last time. Just review that for a minute. Remember Rahab, she let her rope down to save herself. The rope being symbolic of Jesus, and also like the blood over the door during the Exodus, when the angel of death passed through on Passover. So that rope saved her and her family, would save her and her family eventually when Jericho was attacked. But let's go ahead and read chapter 3. Is there anything else I want to tell you ahead of time? Let me see. Okay, I hope I don't forget anything, but we're just going to start reading. So, chapter 3. Then Joshua rose early in the morning, and he and all the sons of Israel set out from Shittim and came to the Jordan, and they lodged there before they crossed. Remember, they're headed west. At the end of 3 days, the officers went through the midst of the camp, and they commanded the people, saying, "When you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God with the Levitical priests carrying it, Then you shall set out from your place and go after it. Remember, the spies had come back, and they had come back after 3 days. Um, I was a little unclear whether they went to the area to lodge by the river and then they waited 3 days after that, or if it was 3 days altogether that they took off. But anyway, let's just keep going. However, there shall be between you and it a distance of about 2,000 cubits by measure. Do not come near it, that you may know the way by which you shall go, for you have not passed this way before. Then Joshua said to the people, consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. Consecrate means set yourselves apart, to be set apart. 2,000 cubits is about a half a mile. So this is important because when you look at pictures like in any like Bible storybook or just Google art that depicts this, it will show people crossing the Jordan River right near the ark. They were not right near the ark. They had to stay like a half a mile away. They could probably barely see it. And, you know, they might only be able to see it because of, well, I'm thinking, you know, there's going to be, with the priest carrying this ark, there's going to be quite a bit of pomp and circumstance around it, if you want to call it that. I don't know if those are the right terms. Like, I think I'm a couple miles away, at least from like where I live, from the pool, the local pool, but I can see all the trees around it, and I can see it from the distance. But anyway, so anyway, this ark was a half a mile away. Okay, so a lot of you were probably with me for Genesis and Exodus, or a lot of you might have a general knowledge of the Ark of the Covenant anyway. But those that might be new, you know, the Ark of the Covenant was a box. Ark means box, and God instructed Moses to have it built. Inside the Ark of the Covenant were the Ten Commandments. Aaron, brother of Moses' rod, brother of Moses' rod. He had a rod, and it bloomed even though it was cut. It was like it blossomed with almond blossoms. And manna. They saved some manna. On the top of that Ark of the Covenant, that it was overlaid with gold. It was wood, but it was overlaid with gold. And the top part of it, the lid, was called the mercy seat. And you can watch some videos on it. Fascinating. And God, you know, once the mobile tabernacle that the people had been using, you know, eventually they would build a temple when they settle in the Promised Land, and they build a temple, but which is a more permanent structure. Of course, they built more than one temple because it would not be permanent. But anyway, but this is the exact picture of that. And the whole point of it was, you know, because Jesus had not yet paid for sin, people had to be separated from God in a sense. So in this tabernacle, there would be a court, like an outer area, and the believers could go in there. And then in the actual tent, there would be, it was like called the tent of meeting, and there would be the first part of the tent of meeting called the holy place. And in the later temple too, the holy place. And priests could go in there, and in there was a table of showbread and an incense altar, which represented the prayers of the people, and a lampstand. And the other priests would go in there, and that lampstand was always lit, and the priests would do that work, and they would eat the bread and all that. And then in the next, that was the first room that the priests only could walk into. And then in the inner chamber, which was called the Holy of Holies, or the most holy place, That's where the Ark of the Covenant was kept, the box. And only the high priest could go in there. Not just any priest could go in there. They would die if they did. It was separated by a very large curtain. And the high priest would go in once a year on the Day of Atonement and place the blood of a lamb on top of that mercy seat. God would come down and meet him there. So God, the high priest, was a representative of the people. He placed that blood on the mercy seat, and God would come meet him there. Now that was, and God would receive that blood as payment or symbolic payment of sin. So before Jesus came, when Jesus came, that curtain tore in two, and anybody could go into the presence of God. But until then, only the high priest, and only once a year on Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. So I just want to give you that brief history in case you might have been unaware of it, and you can learn more about it. But when they would pack up and move, of course, they had to take all the tabernacle with them, and certain groups of them had to carry certain parts of the tabernacle. And certain priests carried the Ark of the Covenant. They didn't touch it. They would die if they touched it. They in their sinful state. Only the high priest could do that, and only once a year. So they would carry it with, and there was only one high priest. So they would carry it on poles. There were like, loops or whatever they could put the poles through. And they would carry it that way. So people were supposed to stay a half a mile away from it. So in all the photos, or not photos, but in all the, I wish we had photos, and all the artist renditions of this event, or at least all that I've seen, the people are crossing the river, the Jordan River, near the Ark of the Covenant. That is not the case. They had to stay a half mile away from it. So let's keep reading. And Joshua spoke to the priests, saying, "Take up the Ark of the Covenant and cross over ahead of the people." So they took up the Ark of the Covenant and went ahead of the people. Now the Lord said to Joshua, "This day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of all Israel, that they may know that just as I have been with Moses, I will be with you." So Joshua is being obedient here. He's telling them to get the ark, go. And God is going to exalt him. And, because this miracle came true, as Joshua said, I heard people say, this proves that he was the chosen person to lead them. So the Lord is going to exalt him in the eyes of the people here. Verse 8, "You shall moreover command the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant, saying, when you come to the edge of the waters of the Jordan, you shall stand still in the Jordan." Then Joshua said to the sons of Israel, "Come here and hear the words of the Lord your God." Joshua said, "By this you shall know that the living God is among you, and that he will assuredly dispossess from before you the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Hivite, the Perizzite, the Girgazite, the Amorite, and the Jebusite." People groups, different people groups that are in their territory. "Behold, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of all the earth is crossing over ahead of you into the Jordan. Now then, take for yourselves 12 men from the tribes of Israel, one man from each tribe." We've talked about the tribes before. "It shall come about when the soles of the feet of the priests who carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, rest in the waters of the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan will be cut off, and the waters which are flowing down from above will stand in one heap." So when the people set out from their tents to cross the Jordan with the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant before the people, and those who carried the ark came into the Jordan, and the feet of the priests carrying the ark were dipped in the edge of the water, for the Jordan overflows all its banks all the days of the harvest, the waters which were flowing down from above stood and rose up in one heap, a great distance away at Adam, the city that is beside Zarethan, and those which were flowing down toward the sea of the Arabah, the Salt Sea, or we call it the Dead Sea, were completely cut off. So the people crossed opposite Jericho. And the priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the middle of the Jordan, while all Israel crossed on dry ground until all the nation had finished crossing the Jordan. Now, I finished reading the chapter. There wasn't really a good stopping spot, but this miracle is so much greater than what it seems. And that's why I like the video I mentioned to you, because he can get into that. Because we don't understand what the geography was like back in those days in Israel, or we're not from there, so we might not understand anyway. It's hard to understand what an amazing miracle this was. First of all, God was desperate for them to get into this promised land, symbolic of our salvation, symbolic of the fulfillment of the promises of God. And the people were desperate. These are the people who had been wandering for 40 years in the desert. All of them but Joshua and Caleb, the first generation, had died off. God did that intentionally. People say, when they were complaining that their children, they wanted to go back to Egypt, that their children were going to die. Well, God let the children go into the promised land, but not them. And they were desperate to get there. So, anyway, but I guess, when I went to Israel in 1997, I stopped at the Jordan River. There's at least one traditional site where they say Jesus was baptized. But I don't know if that's the location I went to or not. I don't remember. Anyway, we went to a place where people are typically baptized, or we saw people getting baptized. So, but from all I've heard and read, the Jordan River back in those days was huge. And nowadays, it's just a fraction of what it once was. So, anyway, it's nothing like it was geographically. So, anyway, and also at this time, remember Rahab, she had flax up on her roof. It was harvest season for flax and barley. And during that time, the Jordan River would flood. And remember the spies when the king of Jericho, his guys were trying to catch those spies of the Israelites. They went back to the fords. They were trying to find places where the guys might have crossed. And the guys did cross, the spies, so they found a place to cross somewhere. But this river was massive and flooding, and so it seems at this time they're crossing right across from Jericho, and it doesn't seem like there are any fords there where they could cross. So, okay, the Bible mentions how it's a little bit different. It's similar to the Red Sea crossing, and I don't know if it's true, but this young lady, I was listening to her talk about it, and she said that this happened on the same day of the calendar, like on the anniversary of the Exodus, or of the Red Sea crossing from Egypt when Pharaoh and his people were drowned. And that could be because God does stuff like that. I didn't try to confirm that in my study, but anyway, it's similar to the event of the Red Sea crossing, but it's different too. But keep in mind, God says that the water, it was like stopped at. And how it's different than the Red Sea crossing is like in the Red Sea crossing, Moses, he like put down his rod at the Red Sea, and it parted, and there was dry ground underneath. It parted on both sides, so it like opened up, and the people went through. Well, with this one, the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant had to step in the water. They had to step in the water before that water would part. It would not part if they just stood there and waited. And this is a perfect example of what we read last time when I was talking about Rahab, and we went to the New Testament and referenced where James says, faith without works is dead. So if the priests had not stepped into that river, it would not have stopped flowing, and they wouldn't have been able to get through. The people would not have been able to get through. It took that act of faith, that work, in order for that to part. So, in that respect, faith without works is dead. They might have believed it, but to make it happen, they had to put that into practice. Does that make sense at all? That's to me, that's just the perfect picture of how faith without works is dead. They could have stood there and believed that that water could part all they wanted to, but until they stepped in there, it didn't. And the fact that they did step in showed they believed. So if I lived in a country hostile to Christianity, which some people say the United States is becoming more that way, although I wouldn't describe us that way. I think there's just certain elements. Satan fights us, right? Just certain elements. But let's say if I were in an area where Christianity were illegal and I were taken into court and they were trying to prove I was a Christian, if there were no evidence, I might not be able to prove that. So in this case, them stepping into that river really proved their faith, that they believed, and that, and that water just parted. So anyway, so the water, it was a little different too. It didn't like part on both sides necessarily. A river flows. And so the Red Sea was a sea, but the river flows. And so the river going south of them just kept going. But the other water was backed up to the city of Adam, which it wasn't on my map, but I used the little, whatchamacallit, where you can measure the mileage. And I pointed out where that would be, and it would be about 20 miles. Well, it was about 20 miles north of where they were. So the water backed up 20 miles north. Like here in verse 16, it says, the waters which were flowing down from above, like up by where the Sea of Galilee and it's flowing down, stood up and rose in one heap a great distance away at Adam, the city that is behind Jerusalem. So those waters, like in artist renditions, you might see water nearby, and there's just this little area, and the Ark of the Covenant's in there, and they're walking through it. That's not the way it was. And I think studying this again helped me to realize that the water was like 20 miles away. That's how much it backed up. And the water that was backed up would have gotten deeper and wider because it was all being pooled 20 miles north of them. So the whole group had to cross that Red Sea, or not the Red Sea. I'm going back farther in history, the Jordan River. And there could have been up to like 2 million people crossing. They had to stay at least a half mile away from the Ark of the Covenant, which means they could have crossed on both sides of the Ark of the Covenant with that many miles to go. And a lot of people could have crossed at once. But this river, in the video, if you watch it, he talks about, the math. If you do the math, it was probably about 2 miles wide, that river. Just a massive body of water. And it's not like that today. It's not like that today. It's not that big. And where the water had pooled up by Adam, because it was pooling, it would have got higher. And it could have been like 120 feet high, they assume. So it wouldn't have normally been that high, but where it was pooling, where it was not allowed to keep flowing. Now, just like with the Red Sea miracle, the ground beneath their feet was dry. So it's not like they were waddling through on mud. It was dry. What else do I want to tell you about that? That's my dog moaning and groaning. Oh, he talked about, and I watched other people talk about this event as well. They're right near Jericho. Another city right by Jericho is, where's my, no, I can't think of it. Sorry about that. Let me look at my map one more time. Maps are just so helpful, and I'm learning to rely on them more and more when I'm doing my studying. So, Gilgal is near there. So remember on the, I want to look at this other map too. On the east side of the Jordan, you have your tribes Manasseh, Gad, and Reuben who are going to settle there. But they did help their brethren get across the Red Sea and fight. And then the other tribes settled on that west side of the Jordan, which was technically the promised land. So, it's something you almost have to ponder to understand the massiveness of it. I don't think we do understand the massiveness of this miracle. Like I told you before, if you do have an opportunity to visit Israel, you will understand the scriptures better, just the geography. I read a book called, here it is. And I think I still had a couple chapters to go. And I had mentioned him to you. Ruger, can you wait a minute? My dog went out. Hold on. Sorry, you're going to see like the floor and the edge of my chair. Let me let my dog out. I can't put that off. Hold on. Okay, Papa. Come on. I apologize, but you can see, even though a couple of my pets are no longer with me, the same old stuff happens. I have to get up and let them out. So anyway, what were we saying? Credola, now I lost my thought. Shoot. Dang. Oh, I know what it was. I mentioned this when we were studying Luke. I had read an article, and the article had to do with what was meant by the rooster crowing twice when Jesus was, in the last time, the night he was arrested. There was an article called When a Rooster is Not a Rooster, or something like that. And he is just so familiar with the geography of biblical times in Israel. And he's just studied it and studied it. It's Mark Turnage. He belongs to, he studied Jewish history and New Testament from Jerusalem University College. But he's done most of his studying in Israel. And let's see. And he's been a professor at different places, including the Assemblies of God Theological Seminary. But anyway, it's a very good book. Now, I don't want to disappoint you if you decide to buy it, though, because when I got this book, he always says you've got to have maps when you study. He's one of the people who said you've got to have maps when you study. There's no maps in here. I found that so frustrating. It's like, if you're going to lecture me about using maps when I study, put some maps in here. But I read almost all of it. I mean, there were a few chapters left. But anyway, but it was pretty interesting because even believers who've studied a lot, we miss things when we don't understand the geography of the area. So I felt like that video helped me understand the geography of this area around the Jordan River and near Jericho during this time. So anyway, I'm glad you joined me. That was chapter 3. It's about a half an hour, so let's stop here and we'll do chapter 4 next time. But ponder these things, maybe read it or listen to it again, and I'll talk to you next week.